Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. I've got a fun fold gift card holder for you today. I'm going to demonstrate one, and I have two other samples to share with you with different occasions. The best part about today's fun fold card is that you can actually change the orientation several ways, and I'm going to show you all of them. If this is your first time visiting my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. Click the subscribe button down below, and next to it, click that bell icon. That will send you notifications when I'm live right here on YouTube, as well as when I share a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's project. I wanted to give you a good close-up of this fun fold gift card holder. So the flap opens on this one, and then the card opens up here. So plenty of room to write inside, and then of course your gift card tucks inside the pocket. I have several other samples to share with you with different orientations as well, but let's go ahead and start putting this one together. I'm using balmy blue cardstock. This measures 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it in half, just like your typical card would go. I'm going to go ahead and use my bone folder and line up those raw edges and create a nice crisp crease for this. We have one other piece here. This is Whisper White, and it measures 3 3/4 by 4 1/4. And I have a piece of balmy blue cardstock. This measures 2 1/4 by 4 inches. These two small pieces are going to need some scoring, very simple, 1/2-inch lines. So I've got my trimmer here that has the light blade for scoring and the dark blade for cutting. I love that they navigate up and down out of the way so that you can keep them on the track at the exact same time. I also love that this guide is clear so that you can see the measurements on both sides of the cutting strip. On the 4 1/4-inch side, we're going to begin by doing a 1/2-inch score line. So you can score on either side of this because this is clear. I'm going to line this up here across the top where it's nice and straight. I'm going to line up the right-hand side here at the 1/2-inch mark. That's going to give me a little bit more to hold here, and then we're going to score. I'm switching over to the balmy blue, and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm lining this up here at the 1/2-inch, and then I'm going to score. The Whisper White piece that's here with the 1/2-inch score line is actually going to extend the card base. I'm creasing over that with my bone folder. I'll be using my silicone craft sheet to help keep my work surface sticky free. Adhesive, liquid glue, and hot glue will not stick to it. I have my Stampin' Seal Plus here, and what I'm looking to do is add adhesive along the strip. The Stampin' Seal is very strong, which is going to ensure that this is going to stay held together. This sticky edge now is going to be attached here to the inside. I found the easiest way to do it is to do it upside down. So I'm going to align the outside edge of my cardstock here at the top, and I'm looking to go right along the edge of the crease, and then we'll tack that in place. You'll see here that we have a strip here down the center of the cardstock. What I decided to do was to cover that. And I'm going to be using some of the beautiful Snowflake Splendor Designer Series paper. If these two pieces are the exact same color, there's really no reason to cover this because we're going to add a liner panel here on the inside for the greeting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over because I want the snowflake side up, and we're going to add adhesive to the strip. You'll see that I'm lining this up here just to cover those two areas where they meet. I'm working close to that crease line. Now, I purposely cut my piece of Designer Series paper longer than I need because I want to share a really great tip with you. If you're anything like me, we are not perfect when we cut. Sometimes we're off by just like a 1/16 of an inch. By cutting it a little bit longer than you need, you're able to flip this over and you're able to use your scissors to cut away the excess from the back side. This is going to make sure that the front side is perfectly even. Now let's work on the pocket for this side. You might recall that I had done this piece of balmy blue cardstock and we did score it at the 1/2-inch mark. I'm going to go ahead and crease it right on top of that score line using my bone folder. This area here, you can do lots of things with. You can emboss it, you can stamp it, but I decided to use more of the Designer Series papers. So I cut mine the exact same size as this area here, which is 2 inches by 4 inches. I'm going to go ahead and flip that over and add adhesive to the back side. When you're adding your adhesive to the side, I want you to make sure that you're adding it sufficiently here to the top as well, because we are going to punch a notch here for the gift card. I'm going to open this up so I can see where my crease is. I'm going to line up the top half of this on that cardstock the very best that I can and secure that in place. My next step is to use the Everyday Label Punch. This is going to create that perfect notch for us. So I'm going to turn this because I know this is where the adhesive is going to go to create the pocket. And I'm going to be using my punch upside down. So I'm sliding it in just a little bit. The first thing I'm doing is to look to see if I have about the same amount of space on both sides. And I'm looking to see that I've got it even across here. Again, we just need a notch. Once you're happy with the placement, go ahead and punch that out. We're going to add adhesive to this area here, but we are not going to add it at the top and the corners because we want to make sure that this is pliable enough for us to get the gift card in. So I'll be using my glue dots. I've peeled one of the glue dots back here, and I'm going to tack that here in the upper corners, one on each side to tack that in place to the inside of that flap. Here's that flap that we created that seam on. I'm going to go ahead and turn this sideways to make it easier for my hand. I'm going to fold this under. I'm holding the sticky edges with my fingers so I get an idea of the placement for this. And then once I'm happy with it, we'll go ahead and we'll tack that down, working at the bottom first and then the top corners. Now you can see that we have a pocket here for the gift card. From that same Snowflake Splendor Designer Series paper, I've pulled out this pattern. You're going to see that there's a beautiful bold pattern of snowflakes on one side, and this has a really frosted, muted feel, but it also gives me a space for me to stamp on. I didn't want to cut out my snowman image because it was a little bit abstract, and when I tested this, it worked out perfectly, but I definitely wanted some snowflakes here, so I'm going to stamp those. I'm going to protect my work surface with one of the small grid papers, and I've pulled out a very small cluster of snowflakes from the Snowflake Wishes stamp set. Lots of different sizes in here. As a matter of fact, this stamp set is offered as a bundle with coordinating dies. I'll be using the Balmy Blue ink pad for this. And because I don't want them to be too dark, we're going to stamp off. So I'm going to ink them up. I'm going to stamp off a layer of ink here on my scratch paper, and then I'll place them here on the Designer Series paper. And I'm going to repeat that process to create a really pretty muted background for this card. You'll notice that I purposely left an area here that was blank, and that's so that I can add this adorable frosty image. He comes from the stamp set called Don't Stop Believing. We've got a great traditional Santa here, but some really fun whimsical images and greetings that coordinate with them. You'll find this in the current mini catalog. Using my Memento ink pad, I'm going to go ahead and ink that image up, and then we're going to stamp that here. I'm going to set that off to the side for just a moment. And I have a scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock here, and this is where I decided to stamp my greeting. From that same stamp set, I pulled out the words, "Sadly, Frosty's first cocoa turned out to be his last." I'm going to go ahead and ink that up, and we'll stamp that here. I decided that I wanted that greeting to stand out, so I used the stitched and nested dies with a coordinating size to my image, and I'm going to go ahead and die cut that. And that has left us with this. And since we still have that ink pad, let's go ahead and work on the inside greeting for the card. This greeting comes from a different stamp set called Warm Hugs. Not only do I love to show you all the different stamps that are available, don't be afraid to borrow from one of your stamps from a different collection to another. It allows you to expound on your purchases and be able to use those greetings and images together. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink my greeting up in the Memento ink, and I'm going to stamp that right here in the center. On a separate scrap of Whisper White cardstock, there was an image in here that really caught my eye for this card. It said, "This one's on me, Merry Christmas," and there's a little cup. And let me show you how I use these. I've pulled out that circle greeting here, and I'm going to ink that up in the Memento ink. And I'm going to stamp that here. Now this has coordinating dies to it, which is going to make it really easy to use. From that same stamp set, I pulled out the outline image of that little small cocoa mug, and I'm going to stamp that here. And there's also an image in that stamp set that's going to fill this cocoa mug, but I didn't want it to be too dark, and I did want to use a slightly different color to contrast with my card. So I'm bringing in the Pacific Point ink. This ink color is going to coordinate beautifully with that Designer Series paper. But because I think it's a rather pigmented shade, I'm going to stamp off one layer here on my scratch paper before I fill my cocoa mug. I pulled out the Warm Hugs dies that coordinates with that stamp set. I did purchase it as a bundle to save 10%. So this die is going to die cut our circle greeting, and then there's also one inside here for the mug, which has left us these pieces. Now let's put it all together and add a little bit of color. So here we have that card base. This is the front of the card, and I decided that I didn't want to stamp it. Instead, I wanted to use some of that same coordinating Designer Series paper. With my silicone craft sheet, I'm going to flip that over, and I'll add adhesive to the back side. That now would adhere here to the front of the card base. Remember our snowman image? Well, I thought it needed a little bit of color. I love to use the Stampin' Blends markers because it leaves flawless coverage. You will not get any streaked lines like you would with a regular dye-based marker. They are dual tipped so that you can choose the size that you want for the project that you're working on. I'm going to be using the basic black, and this is the light shade of the combo, to fill in his hat. I'm switching over now to the dark real red, and I'm going to use that here for the brim of his hat and for the berries underneath the holly. I decided to use the light Bermuda Bay marker for the holly. Believe it or not, this Bermuda Bay color looks really beautiful on this designer series paper once it's colored. The dark pumpkin pie was perfect for his nose. I decided to use the dark crumb cake for his arms and the light crumb cake from that combo for the cocoa. To add a little color to the cup, I'll be using the balmy blue combo. So I'm going to use the lightest shade first. And this area I'm going to add a little bit of highlighting to, and I want to show you how I did that. I've given this just a few seconds for that alcohol base to this marker to evaporate, and this is the dark shade. I'm going to turn the project to make it easier for my hand, and I'm going to add some dark color here at the bottom and a little bit up the side, and I'm going to stretch that out. Now, since that's a very small area, you don't need to come back with the lighter shade and blend it together, which is something I would typically do if this was a broader area. Finally, I thought my snowman needed a little bit of shimmer, so I'm going to be using my Wink of Stella brush. This is a shimmer brush, which does all the work for you, so you don't have to mess with glue or glitter. I'm going to work right over those areas and provide a little bit of shimmer. Now, it does have an alcohol base, and that's going to need to evaporate for a few seconds for that shimmer to shine through. Remember the greeting that we stamped for the inside of this card? Let's go ahead and use those blends one more time. This time I'm going to use the thick side, and I'm going to highlight the word drink because that's what I'm doing with my gift card. I'm going to provide my receiver with a free drink of cocoa on me. This now is going to get flipped over, and we're going to add adhesive to the back side. Coming back to the card base, that will get attached here right to the center. This is where you can see where that half-inch strip of designer series paper is going to hide the areas where these two different color cardstocks come together. Here on the pocket is where I'm going to add the ring. So let me flip that over. The mini dimensionals fit perfectly here. I like to use my Take Your Pick tool with that paper piercing tool attachment to allow me to pick up those small pieces of mini dimensionals, balance those around the ring, and then I'll also use this tool to remove those paper backings. Here on the flap of the card, I'm going to make sure that my words are positioned the way that I want them underneath the opening, and I'll attach that here. And then I have the cup, and I'm going to flip that over, and I'll use another mini dimensional for that here. And that will go right here in the center of my circle. But let me give you a tip. You see how tight of a fit this is, and it's difficult for my hands. So I allowed that to stick to my tool, which will allow me to get this in here right where I want it, and then press that in place. Now let's decorate the outside, the front flap. Remember our snowman image on the designer series paper? I'm grabbing my silicone craft sheet, and we're going to add adhesive to the back side. Because this is designer series paper, any bleeding through here is completely normal. This is not cardstock. I'm going to open up the card, and I'm going to fold the flap so that I can get this where I want it, leaving a small perimeter of that white cardstock all the way around. Now we can add our greeting, but I wanted to add a little pizzazz to this, so I decided to use this beautiful metallic mesh ribbon. This is in the mini catalog as well. I'm going to go ahead and make a knot right in the center. This is about 3 inches of that mesh ribbon. I have made my knot in place, and you can see it stretches the mesh just a little bit, which is going to work to our advantage. I'm going to use one of my glue dots. I'm going to place that here on the knot. This then is going to go right behind where I'm going to place my greeting, and then we're going to trim these up. Let's go ahead and take that greeting now, and we're going to mount this on dimensionals. I want to make sure that you don't put a dimensional in the center, otherwise it's going to impede on the knot, but I am going to make sure that this is well balanced. So I've got one on each of the sides here, and then I'll add one on each of the remaining sides. Just like before, we'll use that Take Your Pick tool attachment to remove those paper backings. This now is going to get adhered here over the center of that ribbon. It will also hold the ribbon securely in place. I'm going to come in with my craft scissors, and I'm going to give this a small angled cut on both sides. I'm going to add my gift card here in the pocket. And then finally, to finish up my card, I decided I wanted to add an embellishment, and these are the adhesive-backed snowflakes. Love them because they're going to match beautifully. Now you can see there's a sheet of white that are iridescent, and there's another sheet here that has a little bit of a blue tone to them, so you have choices. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull off a couple of these. They already have glue dots on the back, which make them super easy to use, and I'll place them randomly here on the front of my card. Isn't this adorable and a great presentation for a gift card? Now let me show you the other two with a slight variation in the orientation of the card. This one is going vertically. So all I did was I turned the card this way and I tucked the flap on the inside versus the outside, so that when you open the card, the pocket is here at the bottom. Unlike this one, I stamped part of the image from the stamp set just to create a really pretty and simple background, but it's very, very colorful. This uses the beautiful Prized Peony bundle. It's a stamp set and the coordinating dies. That suite also has gorgeous gems, ribbon, and designer series paper, some of which I've incorporated here. Now this one is the exact same way as this one, except for the flap is on the inside of the card versus the outside of the card, and it allows you to have more room on the inside to sign. Regardless of which way you decide to create this card or for what occasion, I think that this is going to be a very stunning and impressive way for you to present a gift card this holiday season or for any time of the year. You'll be able to find the products that I've used in the current Stampin' Up! Catalogs. Now, if you don't already have a demonstrator and you are interested in receiving copies, you can head over to lisasstampstudio.com and click on catalogs to request one there. If you have enjoyed today's video, would you please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube, which is a like. It certainly helps. And I look forward to having you join me next time. Have a great day.